Spotlight.
This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Himalayan flash floods, strengthening early warning, disaster preparedness and regional cooperation. The participants are Professor Surya Prakash, National Institute of Disaster Management, and Arjun J. Chaudhuri, anchor.
I'm joined by Professor Surya Prakash with the National Institute of Disaster Management, talking about what happened at the Nepal-Tibet border, early warning systems, what's our disaster preparedness, rescue operations, and the humanitarian assistance that is being extended to the victims of this disaster. Professor Surya Prakash, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Well, let's give our listeners of Akashvani some background, because according to experts such as Surya Prakash ji, there was a collapsed glacier that entered a tributary of the Bhote Koshi River as a probable cause on the Nepal-Tibet border near the Langtan Linung Peak, and that created a earthquake of 5.2 on the Richter scale. There was the flow downstream of ice and rock debris, and the water level was up by 7.5 meters in 30 minutes, and a score of people have been found to be dead and missing, unfortunately. What is your comment on this, Professor Surya Prakash ji?
See, there are a lot of issues which we need to discuss here. One is the transboundary issues. The floodwaters came from China to Nepal and are likely to affect even India. So there has to be an exchange of information, early warning systems, and also adequate action at all levels. So first of all, whatever has happened in China, the government of Nepal must have been informed appropriately and timely so that they can alert their population and evacuate those areas which are likely to be affected. So this kind of information is very much required, and even the people who are actually at risk, they need to be informed of the actions to be taken up. So normally in flash floods, there is a tendency of going downwards in the direction of the movement of the flood waters, which is wrong. People has to go to the adjoining upper reaches so that they are not affected much. But you will see that people running down and getting caught and trapped with the flood waters, resulting into very high number of casualties. The second part of it is that people are always worried about their homes and their resources, and they need to know that life is the most valuable element, and therefore the first thing is to save their lives, and second is the vital documents. So before the monsoons, we normally advise people to keep themselves prepared, because these flash floods are frequent and are widely distributed and are likely to happen during the monsoon periods. In this regard, I would also like to mention that during 2015, 14th to 18th March, we had the Third World Conference, wherein at Sendai, which is in Japan, where triple disaster occurred, this was decided to have a Sendai framework for DRR. And this proposed 4 priority actions, which included understanding disaster risk, strengthening disaster risk reduction for resilience, investments in disaster risk reduction and build back better, reconstruction, recovery, and retrofitting and rehabilitation. But in case of targets, there were 7 targets where we actually give a priority to the human life in terms of safety of human lives, to reduce the death tolls. The second was to reduce the economic damages, and the third was to reduce the economic damages and the number of affected population, as well as damages to critical infrastructure like education and health. So these were the priorities, but there were 3 more targets which were set, which included the national and local strategies, the access to early warning system, and support to the developing nations. So all this is a part of the global strategy, and each country is also having its own national guidelines and national level disaster management authorities, which can connect to each other, collaborate and coordinate in the times of disaster, emergencies, crises and similar situations.
Professor Surya Prakash, you have extensive experience, and today natural disasters are clearly on the forefront in everyone's minds also, because the rains and environmental led disasters is affecting quite a number of people. There is some historical significance for India also in the near past. There have been natural disasters in the Himalayan region. Kedarnath in 2013, Chamoli in 2021, the Sikkim lake burst in 2023, and then in Dharali in 2025. Have we done to mitigate the problems associated with these natural disasters, and how have we evacuated the people and rendered humanitarian assistance?
See, nature is always trying to alert us and send a reminder all the times that we should be preparing ourselves and not challenging the nature in terms of its might. What we are doing, we are actually building on the way of the rivers where the floods occur. So we are not following the flood zonation mapping well, where we have defined the prohibited areas, restricted areas, and the permitted areas with regulatory measures. So these are the kind of things which are required enforcement. While people out of their greed, they will occupy lands which are often cheaper but very highly susceptible to flood impacts, and they build vulnerable structures. For example, bridges with shorter span, where the high speed of water along with the sediment causes lot of erosion, and these bridges, they are swept away by those flood water along with the sediments, and they cannot withstand the impact of those flood waters during the flash floods. So they need to actually understand that if you want to build resilient infrastructure, which is one of the aims of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure established by United Nations on the initiative undertaken by Government of India initially. So now there in Delhi talks about transportation systems. The roads are all constructed with a design and planning without accounting for the extreme weather events. Now climate change induces two type of major things. One is the temperature changes, which is bringing higher glacial melts and also instabilities on the slopes. The second is the heavy precipitation in the form of cloudburst, which is also bringing huge amount of water and discharge into the river system. So the rapid rise in glacial melting, along with sometimes brecking and detachment due to slope failures, which cause damming and temporary lake formations, which burst later on in the form of globs and lobs, which you had given examples earlier in terms of Sikkim Lonak floods, as well as in the Chamoli that occurred on 7th February 2021 in Dholiganga and Rishiganga river systems. So all these are examples, and these are well known. So especially we know it well, what are the susceptibilities and likely disasters, but we are not well about the exact time of its occurrence. However, we can always define a window of period, particularly the monsoons, when these kind of events are more frequent and widespread. So therefore, we always ask all the relevant departments to keep themselves prepared with their resources and personnel in a pre-positioned manner, so that in case such events occur, so the risk can be reduced and casualties can be minimized. So for this, we have different apps also for the early warning system. For example, for the weather early warning, we have Mosam app. For the flood, the Central Water Commission is the nodal agency from Government of India, has a flood watch, and also some of the other apps have been developed by the metros like Chennai and Mumbai, for example, the iFlows app, and also by the state of Assam, FLUS, Flood Early Warning System. And some of the other apps in the mobile are TN Smart, where even actions are also monitored. So nowadays, with the use of AI-based early warning system and satellite-based geoinformatics systems, we are able to capture all the information well before time. But flash floods being a very fast, sudden, swift, and severe phenomenon on steep slopes takes normally less time than any other events to create those kind of impacts. So this early warning and also the knowledge to act appropriately and timely are very, very important in saving those lives. And one more thing I would like to mention here, that most of the victims and casualties happen to the outsiders, not to the local population, because local population which have been living for years together, by virtue of their living experience, they know about these events and they know what to do in those situations. Whereas the tourist trekkers and other visitors, they are not well aware. So you will see lot of people who are come from abroad or other places, they fell victim to it, and they need to be told about the likelihoods and the actions to be taken up. In the case of flash floods, we always recommend to go to the upper reaches and the adjoining upper hillock areas rather than going downward in the direction of the floods. So a lot of information is required, and our National Disaster Management Authority through the Sachet app, which is a common alert protocol, gives this information in a geofenced manner with the multilingual languages, where people will receive messages by push messaging of the likely events, so that they can evacuate timely and reach to the higher, safer places with their vital documents, medicines, and other items. So this is in brief what I would like to state.
Finally, Professor Surya Prakashji, I would like to also understand what is this National GLOF Risk Management Program about strengthening the boundaries of glacial lakes at Arunachal Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, and the Union Territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, because you also have ISRO observations about glacial lakes, which is larger than 10 hectares, which number 2,431 in the Indian side of the Himalayan river basins, out of which 676 have expanded notably between 1984 and 2023. I'm asking this because this is in the background of the collapsed glacier, which led, unfortunately, to this latest disaster. Briefly, please.
It's a very good question, in fact. Let me tell you that earlier we were more response oriented. So the Disaster Management Act actually proposed two types of funds. One was Disaster Response Fund, other was Disaster Mitigation Fund. So through the Finance Commission, various allocations were done to the different hazards. And one of the projects which was conceived by National Disaster Management Authority was National GLOF Mitigation Program, as well as National Landslide Mitigation Program. So these programs are actually established to actually train people, which can be very helpful. So states are supported by the National Disaster Management Authority and Ministry of Home Affairs in undertaking such mitigation projects. So for the GLOFs, all those states where the glacial lakes exist and where we have the potential for outburst floods, they have been encouraged to submit proposals which are reviewed by experts, and then after approval, then the adequate funding is given to those projects for flood mitigation, GLOF as well as LOF and landslides too.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Surya Prakash of the National Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM, for giving us such a in-depth understanding of what's happened with the Himalayan flash floods, the strengthening of early warning systems, disaster preparedness, and regional cooperation in the context of the recent flash floods which have hit Nepal-Tibet border, the rescue operations there, India's humanitarian assistance, and the role of NDRF and the preparedness for the rest of the country. Thank you so much, Professor Surya Prakashji, for being with us on Akashvani.
Thank you for giving this opportunity to share my ideas.
You were listening to a discussion on Himalayan flash floods, strengthening early warning, disaster preparedness, and regional cooperation. The participants were Professor Surya Prakash, National Institute of Disaster Management, and Arjun J. Chaudhuri, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
Spotlight.